Hi, I'm Jeff Miller, TD 13167 with the 501st Legion. The following videos are meant to be a brief introduction into the various parts of Sandtrooper armor, along with a few comments and tips. I hope you enjoy the videos and don't forget to subscribe. Alright, I'm going to do a really quick overview of my blaster. This is the E11. There are several different ways to do this E11. You can actually get a toy E11 and add parts to it. You can get some that are made out of rubber. I think it's Hyperfirm that makes them that way. This one, however, is a resin blaster. It comes in multiple pieces, and I think this is a Doopy set, D-O-O-P-Y. You can Google that and get on the internet. I've gone through and added a lot of extra things to the blaster just to try and make it look a little bit better. Some of it does need some touch up and some work, but again, I am a Sandtrooper, so most of my stuff is supposed to be beat up. So let's talk about some of the things that I did. So, as noted, the blaster comes in multiple pieces. This is a separate piece, the trigger guard. This is separate. The sight is separate. The front piece is separate. All of these are separate pieces. One of the biggest things that I did was, instead of just trying to glue this together to where only, as an example, where this the handle meets the body of the gun, is that I went and drilled into the body of the gun and the handle, and I used little aluminum pins. They were about maybe a ½ inch long. So I would drill into this piece of resin up here where they connect. I would then put in a couple of little aluminum pins, and what I did was I took rivets and I cut the shaft off of rivets and cut them into pieces. I E6000 that into this part of the gun. Then I took that and lined it up where I needed it on the body of the gun, lined it up, kind of pushed down so I could make a mark, and then I drilled into the body of the gun. So then you've actually got a pin attaching this piece to the body of the gun as well as the E6000 up underneath, and luckily I've not had any problems with the gun. So, and I hand it out, I let people hold it. Now luckily nobody's dropped it. I'm pretty cautious, but it's got a good weight to it. It's got a lot of details that have come out in the resin. Some of the things that I've done, you've got the selector switch here. The way that I did that was, this is actually a unused rivet on the bottom of this switch. I cut the bottom of the shaft off the rivet and drilled into this part of the gun and E6000 it in place, and somehow it worked out that it'll flex. The trigger actually works on the gun. The way that I did that is I drilled a hole right through here where the pin would be if this were a real gun. So then the trigger was just kind of floppy. This is before I actually put the trigger guard on, and you can't see it, but there is a spring behind the trigger that actually goes into the body of the grip right here, so that when you pull the trigger, the spring puts it back into place. Other things that I did was I actually went and bought real screws. This is a real screw. When you get the gun, it's got a resin shape of a screw right there. I went ahead and drilled that out and put real screws there. This is a real screw here. This is what they call a D-ring. That's a link of chain. So real screw here. This is a piece of aluminum that I got and basically filed to go into the gun right there. This is a BB, like out of a BB gun, that I put there because the one that was there that was part of the resin cast didn't look good. And there's several other locations across the gun. The sight is made out of a hammered down nail. Anywhere that I could add a real screw or a real rivet or a real pin, I went ahead and did that because I thought it looked better. So on painting the gun, first thing you want to do is you want to wash all of the parts really well. They have to put a release agent on these resin parts for when they pour them into the cast, and that agent is oily, even though they've already cleaned it off before they send it to you. So you wash the entire gun really well. I think I used Dawn dish soap. I assembled the entire gun before I painted anything because you don't want to try and glue painted pieces to painted pieces because the paint will just peel off. I assembled it in pieces. I left the scope and the scope rail off, and I left these off while I was painting. And then I went back basically and used like a hammered spray paint that they sell it at Lowe's and everything, but it's supposed to give a hammered finish to it. And you really can't see it in the video, but it does have a little bit of a hammered finish to the gun to make it look like it's a little bit more textured. You can see it through there a little bit more. I then did several coats of, I painted all the silver pieces. I did a whole coat of, actually the hammered spray paint was a silver. I then went back and hand painted a lot of the silver places. And then I went back and painted the entire gun basically in, I think it was a matte black. And once you've got that, so you've got the hammer coat finish, which is silver, you've got the black over the top of it. So you can then go back and basically just scuff it up and beat it up a little bit. And some of these are painted marks and scuffs, and some of them is where the paint has actually, the outer layer of paint has worn off to the hammer coat finish up underneath. And then I just went back and used what's called blocking. You take paint and you take a flat object, like a block of wood basically. You dip that block of wood in the paint and you hit the high points on the object where you would normally rub the paint off by hitting up against stuff. So on this rail, for example, even though this is already aluminum, I hit paint all on there and smeared it. On this counter here, all of this stuff that you can see that looks like it's silver is where I've taken a block of wood, dabbed a little bit of paint on it, and just kind of glancing blows on it to try and create the illusion that the paint has worn down. Another thing that I did, and I got pretty lucky, these are getting more and more hard to find. This is an actual E6, I can't remember who makes it. This is an actual counter. It's the industrial counter that they used on the guns, and I took it apart and put in my TK number, which is 13167, and then went back in there and added a screw so you couldn't reset it, so the reset button no longer works. As far as the scope, a couple little details there. If you can see right here, you can actually read the label on the scope. The way that I did that was after I put the flat black down, I went back in with a crayon and just rubbed the crayon across that. The crayon filled in the words, and then I came back and did like a clear coat over the top of it. Again, to make some of the details look even better, these are real screws through here. I drilled out the scope right there, that's a marble. And I drilled out this part of the scope, that's the back of that's the front of a mag flashlight. And little things on the scope, I actually painted the scope brass before I painted it black. So then I came back, before I painted the black, I took a piece of string and tied it across this location here, because there's a little dimple right there. That way when I spray painted it, you could still see the brass here, and I don't know if any of this is showing up on the camera or not. And then I came back and just bumped it and used some mineral spirits and stuff to thin out some of the paint, to knock some of the paint off so that you could get back down to some of the brass color that was up underneath. But the gun took a long time, and then once, of course, everything that a Sandtrooper has is supposed to be dirty, so then I came back and aged it and weathered it the same way that I've done all the rest of my armor. And you can watch the video on that separately. It's kind of an involved process. But put any questions you've got in the comments below and I'll try and answer them, and keep an eye out for the rest of my videos. Thanks for watching.